There are lots of anecdotes, really important anecdotes, that might point the way forward, but there is not the kind of wealth of evidence that experts and doctors need to see. And Dr. Anthony Fauci and others have made that very clear. But President Trump continues to promote this drug because he's hearing about it from his friends and his allies on Fox News. And tonight's Washington Post report is quite disturbing because it shows that Fox is a real pipeline for the president about medical advice. Laura Ingraham and two regulars on Ingram's show visited the White House last week to hype this drug. And in the meantime, Don, people like my wife who need this drug, my wife has rheumatoid arthritis, so she uses Plaquenil, which is a brand version of this drug, to keep her symptoms under control. People like my wife need this drug, and they're worried about shortages because there's all this hype on Fox News about the drug.
Okay, let's break this down a bit, shall we?
First of all, it's Brad Stelter. It's getting it from Fox News.
I mean, CNN has been an abomination for years, and that's not changing now. The president is not getting his medical advice from Fox News. He has what are supposed to be world-class experts, nothing to do with their politics or anything else, advising him every day on this. He has access. The president wants to talk to anyone in the CDC, the NIH. He can just get them on the phone. Or he can just talk to the head of any of these organizations. Whatever information he wants access to, he has. This is not complicated. This is a straightforward part of this. So why do we have to keep hearing that he's not listening to medical experts? When either Laura Ingraham or Tucker Carlson, I thought Tucker's show last night was great. I think Tucker is showing how political commentary or rather cable news commentary can be both really engaging and really meaningful for policy. But all the different shows on Fox that have experts on, doctors on to talk about they're talking about their experience in using this drug. Why is that not relevant? Who's the real conspiracy theorist here? I've spoken to doctors here in New York who are treating COVID patients and doctors who have told me that they already are using this drug. Andrew Cuomo, the governor here, has approved doctors who think they should use it to use it. It is a drug that is already cleared by the FDA, and we don't have anything better right now. Some are saying that remdesivir, which is a Gilead Pharmaceuticals drug, might be a little bit better for reduction of the virus in the very, very ill, but that's all anecdotal. That's just all, you saw this, I saw that. With immunity, there are so many different components at play. You have genetics. Increasingly, they're going to be looking at this. Are there some genetic markers for people, particularly younger people? And this is not just, this was in the Wall Street Journal. I'm not just pulling this out of nowhere, but this has been well known for a while here. The Wall Street Journal had this piece on the genetic markers that they're going to be looking for to see why is it that some 35-year-olds or some 45-year-olds or Boris Johnson, for example, just believe is in stable condition but was sent to the ICU. He's only 55, so he's not really at the high risk level. Why do some people get much worse versions of the disease than others? Is there a genetic component? And then that gives you more information for perhaps how you can better prepare people so that they're less likely to get the severe version of the disease. Remember, if we could get to a point where this was a nasty thing that happened to people, that if you got infected with this, it's going to stink. You're going to be, it'd be like a really bad cold, right? If we could get it to that point because of the treatments, it's game changer. Right. If we could make sure people don't have to go to the ICU, this would still be a bad thing and people would be in pain from it. And it would. But if we took out the mortality component and the severe damage to lungs, that's a game changer for us. So that's what we're trying to get to. And the only way, and this is what a lot of these idiots in the media don't seem to understand, the only way you're going to have this information is if you actually use the drug. You have to actually give this to people. They're just not doing it in a controlled trial setting. Because who right now, and I can tell you this, who right now that's told, hey, your lung function is down to, a fraction, 20% of what it normally would be. I don't know what the real numbers are here that are putting people in the ICU, but your lung function is way down and we're going to put you on a ventilator. We can start you on a drug that some people think might really be helpful, that is safe to take. As safe as a lot of other pharmaceuticals out there. That remember, Stelter just said his wife takes it for rheumatoid arthritis. People take it for lupus. Are they all having heart attacks? Are they all having these terrible symptoms from it that make it not worthwhile? No, of course not. Although if they were, they'd pull it off the market. Do you think that a person who was told, hey, you're about to go on a ventilator, you're really sick, your lungs are in really bad shape, we can give you this drug that 10 out of 10 doctors in this, or even 5, let's just make it easy, or not easy, but let's make it more interesting for the purposes of our discussion. 5 out of 10 doctors in this ICU think this might really be the key, and if they're wrong, the side effects are minimal. What rational mind facing their own possible demise would say, nah, don't give me that. I want to just tough it out on my own. Let's see if my immune system can handle it on its own. It's already got me here in the ICU, but let me see if I can just, I think the answer is nobody. I can tell you what I would. I mean, I asked the doc this. I said, would you put, one doc told me he's already put a lot of patients on it. Another doc that I know who's an infectious disease specialist, but is not currently actively daily seeing COVID patients. I'm talking to as many doctors as I can. Anyone who's in my life who's a really brilliant MD, I'm reaching out to on this. Anyone that I know, anyone that I've come into contact with through media. And I said, well, would you put, he said, not only would he put people on this, he would consider putting them on it earlier than even having to go to the hospital to see if there is some, not prophylactic effect, but if the timeline really is critical here, is then you get the drug into people's system sooner, and it's less likely that the virus will be prevented from replicating in a way, whatever the mechanism is, and they're still figuring that out. But you won't get really, really sick is the idea. Instead of waiting until you're really, really sick, I know a doc who says that he'd give it to people before that. And we're being told that there could be shortages for other people out there. Well, no, we'll just make sure that anyone who needs the drug will get the drug. Why? Are we being told that some doctors can have masks, but other doctors can't have masks? No, we're saying, okay, we'll stock up, we'll staff up, we'll make sure we get the equipment that people need. We'll make sure people get the drugs that they need. There's only going to be a run on this drug, a real run on it, if in a month we're still sitting here saying more and more doctors, more and more people say they made it through because of this. And that would be a magnificent place for us to be in as a species, for humanity, not just for this country. Instead, we have to hear I don't know, Trump is pushing for financial. These people are sick in the head. They really are. They think that Trump wants people to die or doesn't care, or he only wants to make a couple of $100. The guy's a billionaire. I mean, I wouldn't say this about, Hillary Clinton, and she's a grasping, greedy maniac, right? But she's worth millions of dollars. I don't think that she would want to do something for $100. We all know this. Hillary Clinton, you can't get her out of bed in the morning for less than $250,000 to give a speech somewhere. She's not gonna be out there pushing for it. It's just so dumb. You almost feel dumb saying it out loud that someone else believes this. You're like, how could we have to even say this? So this war on chloroquine that's happening, or hydroxychloroquine that's happening right now from the left, and the partisanship behind it. I mean, people are sniping at me on Twitter over this too, because I've talked to doctors and they're saying, oh, well, I've talked to doctors who say the exact opposite. Okay, well then they must feel that this is really putting people in danger. Don't they have an obligation to come forward and explain that? And if it's so dangerous and so bad, why don't we pull it from the shelf entirely? It's safe enough for people that have lupus and rheumatoid arthritis, but not safe enough for individuals who are very, very possibly going to be not just in the ICU, but could very, very clearly die within a week or two. Not safe enough for them, huh? This is like telling people you can't. Trump thinks that you should have a right to try different cancer treatments. So I'm a Democrat. I'm a leftist. So I want to oppose that right to try, because if Trump's for it, I must be against it. Sorry, people that are about to die from stage 4 cancer. You're not allowed to try that thing. What if it kills you if you try it? This is the illogic. This is the insanity that we're up against. And this is only going to get worse as this drags on. It's going to get worse with what we're doing about the economy. It's going to get worse with how we're treating the disease. And definitely on the lockdown authoritarian measures that we're increasingly being, I'm going to get into that too. We're increasingly being told are just a necessary part of life now. I am saddened at how it's one thing to say, all right, I'm going to do this, but you're being put on notice, government, that this can't continue like this. This is a short-term measure. I'm not just going to say this is okay and it's okay indefinitely, that you suspend the Bill of Rights, that you tell me where I can go and what I can do and, whether I can live life at all, because you say that I'm putting other people at risk. Really? What if you've already been infected? That's why we need serology tests. But there's another part of this, and I need to talk to you about serology tests, because there are a few ways that this gets a whole lot better really fast. The therapeutic is the most obvious one. They keep talking about a vaccine, but a vaccine to me feels like holding the carrot way, way, way out there and telling us, oh, just behave, do everything we say for the next 18 months, and maybe there'll be this vaccine for you, and then everything can be better. Therapeutics, at least, are more short-term. Hydroxychloroquine, zinc, azithromycin, these different therapeutics that you're hearing about right now, that's in the immediate term. But there's another game changer possibility out there, and I spoke to a doctor at some extent about it yesterday. Spent about 45 minutes on the phone with an infectious disease doc who, is just a wealth of knowledge about all this. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about serology tests. I'll try to, and people are saying, oh, well, can you get some of these the doctors who are active in the healthcare and in the hospital system right now? They really can't, it's not comfortable for them to go public and on the record. Some of them can, but you've got to go through the press office. And they don't want people talking to the media because, they view it as a risk to the reputation of the hospital. That's why the PPE shortage, the personal protective equipment shortage, doctors don't want to go on record to talk about it. So there's some sensitivity around that. And obviously, as someone who's in the media, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure anyone who's giving me necessary background and just giving me helpful information, I can't allow there to be any consequence against a first-line medical provider because he's telling me what's really going on in the hospital, what's really going on here in the city. But there are plenty of doctors who are coming forward who are saying very similar things, right? So we know that there is a movement among doctors that believe it's worth checking out. It's worth investigating and seeing through whether hydroxychloroquine is the therapeutic that will help get us through this. It's also worth pushing harder. They keep pushing for tests to find out where the disease is. That's important. I'm not saying it's not, although testing has really turned into it was so popular for a while because it was a criticism of Trump and the administration because they hadn't ramped up testing. So now that they have a lot more testing, you're hearing much less about that, in part because there's more testing, but also because it's not as useful a talking point against Trump. Serology tests, though, looking for antibodies. This is big. We'll talk about Biden and some other stuff too. I promise you, we're not just going to stick around and go deeper and deeper into the pandemic rabbit hole of the news here today, because I know every day that's what dominates. I've got some thoughts for you on serology tests.
I was informed that Governor Cuomo has already told you and announced. He called me up a little while ago and he asked whether or not it would be possible to use the ship with respect to fighting the virus. And we hadn't had that in mind at all, but we're going to let him do it. And we're also going to let New Jersey, Governor Murphy, we spoke with him a little while ago, and New Jersey is going to use it also because New Jersey is a hot spot. So Governor Murphy and Governor Cuomo are going to be using the ship for New York, New Jersey, and it's a big ship. And it's now COVID. It's set for COVID, and we are going to, hopefully, that will be very helpful to both states.
Hopefully it will. That is a shift that I think a lot of us have been expecting here. There aren't many people in hospitals except for COVID-19 right now. Very few car accidents, very few just accidents in general, very few stabbings and shootings and things of that nature here in New York. There's a lot less people out on the streets. So there's just not a lot of non-COVID activity in the hospitals. So they're switching. They're switching the United States naval ship Comfort, this hospital ship. But as I've been telling you, I could probably jog to it in about 10 or 15 minutes from where I am right now. Okay. Serology tests. There's a lot of complexity here. You talk about ELISA tests and, assays and all this, and I'm not a lab tech. I don't know. I mean, that's you can get into that with that's what we'll bring on a medical expert to talk about. But I can tell you this, serology tests would be looking for antibodies in your system. Antibodies in your system would prove that you had been exposed and or infected, and now you're past it, and you have immunity to this disease. This was spreading like wildfire in February, in March, and it's only recently that we've locked down, and they say that's brought down the curve. That's been lessening the spread. Okay. It is completely feasible. I won't say probable, but it's feasible that there are a lot of people who were infected with this. And in fact, they tell us this. They think that there are a lot of people infected and didn't know it. All right, well, think about how that changes the dynamic here. If we get serology tests out there and we find out that there are millions of Americans who have antibodies to this, you could extrapolate it out, do a random sampling of the population, and then you look at what the data tells you. And let's say that there's a belief that millions of people were exposed to this and millions of them already have the antibodies. Well, then doesn't that show us that, one, there's already some herd immunity effect? If that were the case, this is all based on what could happen. I'm not saying this is happening. Some herd immunity effect in place, whereby if you have millions of people who are immune to this, they can go back to work. And it would also raise questions about what really is bringing down the curve. Is it that the infection spread and a lot of people were infected and didn't know it and now have immunity and therefore aren't spreading it even further? These are just the questions that you'd have better data to answer. We are making determinations here based on incomplete and faulty data every day. And anyone who's telling you otherwise is not looking at the numbers. They don't know what they're talking about. But serology testing to show that there is a much broader degree of infection from this than was previously thought, and therefore people that are through it and fine, they'd be able to go back to work. And not only that, if I had a serology test, for example, I could know that I could spend time with members of my family who are higher risk and not have to worry about it. And I could take better care of them and not have to be concerned about being in close contact with them. Serology testing is key. This needs to happen soon. This needs to be an absolute priority because it'll also tell us a lot more about this disease, given how highly infectious this is. Boris Johnson's got it, Tom Hanks has got it, and people all over the world have gotten it. It's something that we've obviously been caught unaware, in a lot of ways, been caught unaware of how quickly this would spread. If millions and millions and millions of people have it, or rather had gotten it and didn't even know it, were asymptomatic or had such low symptoms that they didn't know, that also changes substantially the mortality rate and makes us think more about protecting vulnerable populations instead of being in this rolling shutdown and series of shutdowns. And, there's going to be questions eventually asked about whether this was the way that this shutdown was done. Was this the right move? The serology tests are going to play into that a lot. We have to see what the data says, but we need these blood tests to look for antibodies to show that we have immunity. We need it ASAP.
The anti-COVID-19 Volunteer Drone Task Force. Please maintain a social distance of at least 6 feet. Again, please maintain social distancing. Please help stop the spread of this virus, reduce the death toll, and save lives. For your own safety and your family's safety, please maintain social distancing. Thank you for your cooperation. We are all in this together.
We are all in this together. And if it saves just one life, anything is justifiable, right? This is what you're hearing more and more as we get deeper into this COVID-19 crisis, Wuhan virus crisis. That was a drone flying above the heads of people in Brooklyn and New York City, doing exactly what you could hear, telling people you got to stay 6 feet apart. And people often, I think, overuse the term Orwellian. A lot of them have never read Orwell and don't know what they're talking about. But that's pretty Orwellian. That's very much out of the playbook of Big Brother to have a flying drone that is telling everybody that they need to maintain a certain distance. And, this is where I get really concerned. I get concerned because we're heading toward a turnkey totalitarian state. We are. We have people now in the largest numbers I've ever seen who it's one thing to say, I'm going to give you this. All right, I'm going to give you the keys to the car to get us to the hospital, even though you're an unlicensed driver, but we're in an emergency. It's another thing to just be like, oh, you demand the keys to the car and, I don't know if you've had a few drinks. Sure, take them. As long as you want. Go for a ride. Do whatever you want to do. We're just giving up these rights without even having a discussion about what's going on. There's a story out in Colorado about a man who was at a playground with his daughter, and he was arrested in front of her for not adhering to social distancing. I just saw that story break before I came on the air. There are videos out there of people who are paddleboarding out in the ocean by themselves, not just feet, hundreds of yards from another human being. Oh, nope, the beaches are closed. Shut down. They're shutting down the parks. They're shutting down the beaches. They're shutting down all these things. And if you ask, you say, hold on a second. I thought that the rule that we had all agreed to was social distancing. But now increasingly what's happening is they're just saying, oh, sorry, because not everyone does exactly what we say, we punish everyone. This is the ultimate usurpation. This is the ultimate usurpation of constitutional rights and individual prerogative by the state. This is a big, big problem. I've never seen anything like this in my life. And I understand that people would say, Buck, it's necessary and it's temporary. Maybe it's necessary. Fine. Although I'm much more willing to have a debate about the specifics of these individual measures. Really? It was necessary to tell everybody no more school, go home and don't leave your home. Oh, you might be a 16-year-old who has a cough and thinks it's no big deal, but now you're living in close quarters in a 600 square foot apartment with grandma. Yeah, that's a brilliant idea that they just one size fits all for all of us here in New York, wasn't it? That's a great idea. Cuomo's even said, I love this, Livs go, oh, what do you know? No, the governor who's controlling this is like, yeah, maybe that was a bad idea, but we did it. No, I'm sorry. I want to have a debate. I want to have a discussion about how long do we cede these rights? How long are we told that you're not allowed to go to work? One of the biggest, and I did tweet about this right away, the absurdity of it. In the opening weeks of the lockdown, we're told, you can only go basically for groceries or to the pharmacy. Okay. I went into a Whole Foods here in New York because, I like my bougie cuts of meat and, my fish and all that stuff, right? I'm trying to find a way to say this. I like the fancy Whole Foods stuff sometimes. And I'm in Whole Foods and it was just packed. It was like a New York City subway car at 8:00 in the morning heading down to Midtown. And, well, okay, this is now a place where not only are you bringing people together in close quarters, but as Tucker pointed out on his TV show last night, everyone has to go to the place in the neighborhood. So you're creating one concentrated location where everyone is going and they're going to be in close quarters. That we're told, oh, well, if you run out of avocado and you need to make some guacamole. Meanwhile, if you want to go for a walk in the park and, somebody sees, I keep seeing people showing photos of, there are 100 people in this park. Okay. Are they staying 6 feet away from each other, or are they holding hands and, making out and snuggling? If they're just standing 6 feet away from each other, what's the problem? But we're turning into, because we're scared, and we're so scared as a country. And a lot of you are like, Buck, I'm not scared. Yeah, good. But if you look around, you'll see fear has just washed over this nation right now. And it's when you're scared that the state has its greatest opportunity to seize more power, to make more demands. And, it's so interesting to me. We've been told for years that Trump was a dictator. He was even Hitler-like. He was a fascist. I mean, this is stuff that supposed intellectuals have been spewing for years. This is now a perfect scenario. If Trump were the person the left had pretended that he was for the last going on 4 years, you couldn't foresee a situation more ready-made for a seizure of power and totalitarianism ensuing than what you have right now. And Trump is the one who's saying, let's get back to work. Let's give people back their freedoms. Let's give people back their rights. We'll take care of people. We're going to try to lower debt as much as possible. But, you know, we need human beings to have autonomy here. We can't do this thing. It's the expert class. It's the administrative state. And yes, it's, you know, state governments that are blue dominated, in particular, though some red states are engaging in very similar activity. They're the ones that are saying, oh, you do it our way on this or else. Okay. So the turnkey totalitarianism isn't something that Trump is in any way capitalizing on. He's, in fact, pushing against that. It is the administrative state. It is the expert class filtering through different states across the union, blue and red states, that are doing what they think that they've been told to do. And they're going to make other people comply. You must comply with this, or else we're going to run out of patience. We're going to run out of patience. Now, there is an ideological divide here between the left and the right, where the left is much more comfortable with being told what to do by government. They still believe in the system in a way that people who are of a conservative mindset just don't. I don't think that the government is going to be highly effective. I don't think that the government is going to save us all and knows what it's doing. And until proven otherwise, that is how I approach every action the government is taking. Right? I've been skeptical that they really understand what they're doing. And as soon as it has become clear that this is a moment in time where we are facing a real crisis, my sense of the government's ability to handle this is not elevated. I'm even more concerned. What will they do here? I mean, you look at the response after 9/11, and that was a Republican administration, and that was George W. Bush, who I think is a good man, but there were excesses. There were things that didn't need to happen. There was a war that now, if you look back on, the war in Iraq is a very, to call it questionable is charitable. So this is a risk, and we know this. Look to history and see. Government, once it has a taste of certain powers, does not want to give them up. It does not want to give them up. And then you might say, Buck, what about FDR in World War II and the internment of Japanese Americans, for example? You know, they stopped doing that after the war. Well, wars are limited in duration, but yes, look at the New Deal, look at FDR. And the ramifications of the changes that were implemented during a time of tremendous duress in this country. We're still living with them to this day. In fact, there's a reason why liberals are running around screaming about how they want a New Deal now, because they understand that enlarging the government during a term of crisis is so much easier. People are scared. They don't know what to do. And they want someone or something to keep them safe. And there's a very easy exchange of liberty that occurs there. And I am troubled to see this happening all across the country where, I'm willing to say, if the government tells me that I have to stay at home for the next year, let's say, and they just say, sorry, stay home for the year, I'm going to start violating those mandates. I'm not going to do it for a year. I'm not going to do it for 6 months. Maybe 3 or 4, I guess. I don't know. And I'm in New York. I'm facing this stuff everywhere, but there are limits. And they tell us, oh no, don't worry. We know that this can't be forever. But then when you say, okay, because I'm not going to comply forever, then the statists bristle at you a little bit. Then all of a sudden they get a little vicious. What do you mean you're not going to do what we say? Yeah, that's what I mean. There are risks in life, right? There are things that people are allowed to determine for themselves, and that the state does not get to say that you do not get to live a normal life indefinitely because they think, according to some experts that they've talked to, this is going to be better for all of us. They can say it for a month. They can say it for a few months, maybe. They can claim that this is an emergency power. But we need to have in place that part of our own mind, that part of our own psychology that says, all right, but This isn't just limited government because you say it will be. It's limited because we, the people, are telling you it will be. And we're going to run into this. This is not just going to be theoretical, because what's going to happen is we're going to get these cases down. The country is going to be really sick and tired of this. We're going to have more and more data, serological testing. We're going to know more about the truth of how widespread this virus is, and how well it can be treated, and what the real mortality is. And you're going to have an enormous conflict between those who want to say, all right, let's go, let's get back to some degree of normalcy, and those who say, no, you're going to stay in shutdown. You're going to do what we say or else, because we're smarter and we know better. That's really at the heart of the left, of modern liberalism, of progressivism. You do what we say because we're smarter than you. And that's one of the reasons why they're rewriting the history of how this pandemic has already occurred, because nobody knew what to do about this in the early stages. Nobody was properly prepared in this country, or any country for that matter. But now, in order to maintain that ability to dictate whether you can go for a walk with your kids, whether you can go out to a park or get some fresh air or go for a jog, or all these different things that doctors will tell us individually we can do, that's okay. The doctors will say okay, but then the state will say, sorry, some people violate it, shut it down. It's just not going to fly forever. And when I say forever, it's not going to fly for all that much longer. And people can get very mad when they hear that. They can say, oh, well, what about this? And, oh, you're not taking this very seriously. Very seriously. We're not shutting down our civilization in America indefinitely for any reason, right? Everyone concedes that. But then when you try to push them a little bit for, okay, what does that mean? There are some forces in this country who they're getting this taste of absolute power from the government. They can tell you whatever. They can print money and give it to whomever they want. They can tell you to stay in your home, who gets to work, who doesn't, who gets, resources from the government, who doesn't. Any liberty that you think you have, they can take away from you. There are people for whom those powers are very appealing, and they will not easily or quickly hand them back unless we watch them and hold them accountable for this. We have to remember that. And I want to hear much more of that side of this debate going forward. Much more of all right, we're making these concessions, but this is not a blank check. This is the government, even in this crisis, does not have a blank check, not just against the economy, but a blank check against our liberties. They cannot just draw on these things endlessly without us pushing back.
Okay, people, just because Jesus is on your side doesn't mean you can't get sick. Don't forget, Jesus was on Jesus' side and he died, okay? Yeah, he came back, but that was like a one-time thing. I think it's like Mario Brothers' lives. Maybe he's got 2 left. And it's funny how a lot of these same people who say Jesus will protect them from coronavirus are the same people stocking up on guns. I don't get it, huh? Won't the blood of Jesus protect you from an intruder? Nah, I'm going with buckshot for this one. He needs Jesus more than me. And look, whether you want to believe in coronavirus or not, it is real. And today, the United States passed the 10,000 coronavirus deaths.
He's not funny. That's Trevor Noah, who took over for Jon Stewart, who, while a propagandist, was at least clever. Trevor Noah is not even clever. But he's also telling you this is what the left thinks about the rest of the country. This is what the blue coastal elites, the urban elites across America really do think of everybody who does not fit into their worldview, which is that there are a bunch of Bible thumpers who they're just all these claims. They're stupid, they're slanderous, and it's important that we remember, unfortunately, that there really isn't this coming together. That you see all these journalists who are writing about how red states are going to have far higher death rates because people don't believe in this virus. That's idiocy. People, of course, know this virus is real. Just like when they said Trump said it was a hoax, that was all a lie, but they don't care. And now we see the blue states are getting hit by far the worst. I'm in the bluest of blue places here in New York City, and we're getting crushed by this virus. They don't change any of their analysis about any of this, and they're not able to overcome their stupid, partisan, nonsense. They're not able to just put that aside and see us all as people in a very difficult situation that need to come together and help each other out as Americans. We keep being told that this is like a war, and yet we've been invaded. We know who the enemy is, and yet there are a lot of leftists who view the real enemy as anyone on the right who does not submit, does not obey, does not say, sorry, we were wrong about Trump all along, and we'll do anything you say because you're the smart ones who know what to do now. Really? I think the evidence certainly goes in the other direction recently, but yes, rooting for catastrophe against America for 4 years, which is what the left has been doing. Finally, we have had a catastrophe befall us, but they've been saying this is the 20th thing that's come up that was going to be, war with North Korea, war with Iran, all stock market crash when Trump gets elected. And now finally there's a catastrophe and they're acting like this was foreseen by them. No, they just were hoping for catastrophe. And now here is a catastrophe and they're exploiting it. Okay.